أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبما رحمة من الله لنت لهم ولو كنت فظا غليظ القلب لانفضوا من حولك فاعف عنهم واستغفر لهم فاعف عنهم واستغفر لهم وشاورهم في الأمر فإذا عزمت فتوكل على الله إن الله يحب المتوكلين والذين استجابوا لربهم وأقاموا الصلاة وأمرهم شورى بينهم ومما رزقناهم ينفقون.
Assalamu alaikum. As Hazur has stated in numerous sermons, Shura is the second most important institution in the Islamic system of government, Khilafat being, of course, the most important. In light of the fact that the Ahmadiyya movement is the only Islamic organization with a Khilafat, it is of vital importance for every Ahmadi to understand and appreciate how Shura works. In this program, we will attempt to provide a brief overview of the Shura process. And in our studios here at Bet al-Hamid Mosque in Chino, we have probably one of the best persons to help explain this, Brother Rahmat Jamal, who is the Vice President of the Los Angeles Jamaat and who has just returned from the 12th annual U.S. Shura held in Washington, D.C. Welcome, and thank you for being here, brother.
Thank you, and I'm very, very happy to be here. And it would give me great pleasure to impart some of the important information that I have received from the Shura and to really explain the importance of it to the best of my knowledge so the Jamaat and people who are interested can understand how this Shura really works.
Okay, could we start then with tell us what the Quranic injunctions are that are the foundation for the Shura?
Yes, I would like to read this translation, which you heard the Arabic version of these verses by Brother Khalid Wahid in his in the opening versions of the Holy Quran that he recited earlier in the beginning of the program. And the first verse reads as follows. And it is the great mercy of Allah that thou art kind towards them. And if thou hadst been rough and hard-hearted, they would surely have dispersed from around thee. So pardon them and ask forgiveness for them, and consult them in matters of administration. And when thou art resolved, then put thy trust in Allah. Surely Allah loves those who put their trust in Him. And the verse that supports this previous verse on Shura is found in chapter 42, verse 39. And I read the translation as follows. And those who hearken to their Lord and observe prayer, and whose affairs are decided by mutual consultation, and who spend out of what we have provided for them. This is the basis of the Islamic Shura, which is observed strictly by the Ahmadiyya movement.
Alhamdulillah. I know I'm familiar with several sermons of Hazur's where he has gone in depth and explained the principles behind Shura and the philosophy behind Shura. What I would like to ask from you is if you could give us, first start off with like a background explanation of how the process works on the local level, so that the new Ahmadis and people like myself can get a more clear understanding of how they will eventually become involved in it.
Yes, I think to answer that question, I think we have to start at the top. The words that you mentioned in your opening statement pertaining to the Caliphate being the most important institution of Islamic government and the Shura being the second most important of the institutions. I think what we have to do is give you a little brief explanation on these two institutions. First, we have to understand that they work together. One cannot work without the other.
Right.
Caliphate being the most important of the institutions gives the understanding that the final decision is his as far as we Muslims are concerned. If you don't have the Shura, then there won't be any decisions to make by the Caliphate.
Right.
If there's something, if the Shura that does not present him with decisions to make a judgment on, then there's nothing for him to judge. So therefore,
Right.
this is the Shura is very important for him to make any kind of decision of important matters to the Jamaat. And another thing I'd like to mention, as far as the overall pictures of the Jamaat of the Shura is concerned, it does not stop with the international. We have an international Shura too,
Right.
which embraces problems and advancements and institutions that affect the entire world. We have national institutions that Shuras that affect the people in that particular country, and that you'll find that most people in different countries have different needs and different problems and different desires.
Right.
The overall picture of the Shura does not stop there either. It drifts down into the local Jamaats. And every time we have an Amala meeting, which is translates into an executive meeting,
Right.
that's a mini Shura. Because the president of the local Jamaat, what he does, he calls an Amala meeting. And why does he call that Amala meeting? He needs consultation from the local law office holders as to what kind of decision he can make. Doesn't stop there.
Okay.
So you can see why Hazur said that the Shura is the most important institution after the Caliphate, because it reaches down into the homes, where the father is the head of the family. He acts as the Amir or the Khalifa in the house. So therefore he sits down and he asks the family members, what do you think? We got a problem.
Right.
Or we need this. How do you think we should go about this? So the advancement of the Islamic society is tied into the Shura 100%. If progress is to be made.
Right.
And we can look at the early history of the Muslims and see how the progress they made through the institution of Shura.
Just an observation, it seems almost the way you're describing it, that Shura is actually an ongoing process, continuously.
It is.
In various levels,
It
and it
is.
just merely culminates in these annual meetings.
It starts at the top, but it drifts down into the fabric of the society.
Right, so it's like a continuously consulting kind of process.
Right.
Excellent. So let's talk about, I've never been to Shura, and you've been to about 10 of them. So I'm really curious to sort of get a feel for what like the day-to-day events, the schedule, you know, what happens, you know, okay, you fly in, you show up.
Okay, well look, before that happens, before there's any journeys involved, the shura, or the participants of the shura, has to be first initiated on the local level.
Okay, so we have a selection process.
Yeah, the first thing we have to do before we decide who's going to participate in the shura, we have to present programs or ideas or anything that we would like for the shura to discuss. We have to put that on, we have to send those proposals in to the shura, and they have a body of people there to decide which of these proposals that they think is important, that they should put on the agenda, and then they don't put on the agenda. But before the actual shura takes place, this process takes about 3 months or so before the actual shura meeting takes place, and so everything begins here. And so once that has been done, you send these proposals, and if you're not aware of what happened as far as Los Angeles is concerned, we sent in a proposal in which it was accepted by the shura. And I'll explain you what was the outcome of that proposal as we get into the more details of the shura.
Right.
So when the proposals are sent, then the people decide who they want to go to the shura. They elect from their members. Now the president is an automatic member of shura. Being president of a Jamaat, that makes you automatic member.
Okay.
So there's no election for him on that ground. If you have someone in your Jamaat that holds a national office, any national office, like whether it's financial secretary, social secretary, secretary of propagation, and no matter what secretary he is, if he's a national, he's an automatic member of the shura. Now this has already been decided, so you got at least one person from every Jamaat, and the people who have national office holders, so you got 2 people from the Jamaat, right? That's automatic. Now, apart from that, if your Jamaat has 50 Chanda paying members, then you're allowed to elect one other member of your Jamaat, of the choosing of the Jamaat. They decide this themselves. Like they say, somebody proposed your name that I would like to have Brother Abdul Ghaffaar be one of our representatives. If someone stands up and says, I second it, then you get voted for.
Okay.
If you have 50 Chanda paying members, then you're allowed 1 delegate. If you have a 100 Chanda paying members, you're allowed 2 delegates. And if you have 150 Chanda paying members, you have 3 delegates. So every 50 people you have Chanda paying, then you're allowed another. So you can have 4, 5, 6 delegates.
So as far as representation goes,
with that system,
it pays to pay Chanda.
With that system, you can put as many, so you send as many people to the shura as you like. But this is how the system works. So
it's based on the merit of the people who are fulfilling their obligations.
And that's it. And then also you pick people who you believe to be the best person qualified for that, to go to the shura and make those decisions. So that's part of the local Jamaats have to decide that. And then one other thing is important as far as shura is concerned. When this process begins, you have to send in problems or anything that benefits the entire U.S. Jamaats. You can't send in a proposal that's only benefits the Los Angeles Jamaat.
The scope has to be
national.
Okay.
So when you send that proposal in, that has to be kept in mind. Because I remember one time we discussed whether we should send a proposal to the shura or not pertaining to a cemetery. And they ruled us back, said that's local. Because the whole nation is not going to be buried in the whole American Ahmadiyya community is not going to be buried in Los Angeles. Only the local members are going to be buried here, so they don't consider those kind of proposals. But it's something to benefit the entire the Jamaat of the United States. Then they take those things under consideration.
And the same applies for international.
International things have to be done. Things that benefit the international, the entire Ahmadiyya movement. All 10 to 15 million adherents, whatever country they happen to be, Germany, Africa, France, America, Canada, doesn't matter. That they have to benefit from these proposals. And the international shura, that's something that's presided over by Hazur, not any local Amir, because it's an international thing.
So like from each local city level, then you send in the proposals, and each Jamaat, local Jamaat, then votes for their representatives. And at that stage, then we are ready to...
First, it has to be approved. These names go into the Amir of that country. And when he looks over the names, and if he approves the names, then they'll reply, probably the president or the missionary. If I got to mention the missionaries, they're also automatic members of Shura, and so we should mention that they're automatic. But the delegates have to be approved by the Amir, and once he sends back the approval, then you wait for the date of Shura, and then you go. Then this is with the transportation, when people come here and there, when this takes place.
So that when each of these delegates then forms a voting group for these proposals at the Shura itself, right? No. No, not the delegates don't do that. The Amir, Naib Amir, and the national office holders decide that. The proposals that they're going to accept and the ones they're going to reject. Some of them they reject because they don't think they're good proposals, or they don't think they're beneficial to the American Jamaat or whatever country they happen to be held in. Those they think are good and beneficial, these are the ones that they hold and they keep for consideration, and these are the ones we go there and decide on. So like in terms of the context of consultation, that you have the local level, and then when the delegates are selected and the proposals are approved, then you have the second level, which is at the Shura itself. Yeah. Where then you have a vote, or how does that work? As far as consultation, the things that they are decide to consider. Right. Once that's established, that they are going to consider these proposals, and the delegates show up, what happens then? Well, the first thing we do when we arrive at the Shura is it's usually at Jummah time, and the Shura begins after Jummah, so we attend Jummah. And after that, we proceed to the hall where the Shura is taking place. We begin with the recitation of Holy Quran. Afterwards, followed by dua, silent prayer of the Amir, and his opening address. Then the confirmation of the minutes of the last Majlis Shura by the General Secretary. Report on implementations of last Majlis Shura decisions. Next, the annual report of the activities of the national secretaries. Then followed by the proposals for the Shuras not selected for discussion with reason. Agenda items, proposals for Shuras deliberation. Presentation of budget. Then the proposals that's going to be discussed at this particular Shura are announced by the Amir. And then the formation of subcommittees for discussions on Shura items are then selected, which in the previous Shura was Tabligh, propagation, finance, Tabiyat or training, and general.
general items, and this is the agenda for this particular shura.
Could you describe the process on this committee level? What happens at that level?
Well, the Amir gives you one item for discussion, and the members choose from among the delegates a person they think is more suitable for that particular subject. In my case, rather than going through the whole thing, in my case, the members thought I was better suited to be on the Tabligh subject. Naturally, our financial secretary, we always choose him for finance because that's what he does here. So someone just says, I propose the name of a Middledine for finance, and somebody will stand up and say, I second it, and then they'll write his name on the finance committee. That's how this is how the committees are formed.
So could you then tell us what the subcommittees actually do?
What they actually do is, after they are formed, they deliberate on the proposals that have been sent to the Shura. And each committee has a proposal, or some of them has, like in the general committee, they have several of proposals to deal with because they are general. They take more than one subject. But if you have one specific subject like Tabligh or finance or Tarbiyat, then this is what these people discuss at these subcommittees, how to improve or how to implement that proposal that's made by that particular Jamaat. What we can do. Someone from some Jamaat makes a proposal about how we're going to implement, how we can make Tabligh better, what should we do to bring more people into, or get the Ahmadiyyat and Islam over to more people. We decide from these committees what is the best way to do to get the best results and the largest number of people out of our efforts. Basically, that's what's done in the subcommittees. Or in the question of finance, how to increase the finance, how to make it work better, how to not to waste it, how to get the most benefit out of it, and how to get people paying China that don't pay China. These people sit down and discuss these matters after the committee is formed. Now, what's your next question?
The next question.
Then what happens after that?
Exactly. Logically, after the committees have done their job.
Usually that happens the first day. Now, that same night, but the one thing I failed to mention is that when these committees are formed, before they do what they're supposed to do, the Amir Sahib appoints a president, one person in charge of that committee, and he appoints a secretary to record everything that takes place before discussions are concerned in those committees. Now, the president and the secretary that night, same night that you have those discussions, they have to make a report of all the things and decisions that committee has taken, and they got to present that report until the whole shura the next day, presided by the Amir. And so each president of the committee has to stand up before the whole shura and read out to the shura, the delegates, what his committee has proposed on this particular subject. Whether it's Tarbiyat or whether it's Tabligh or finance or general, he has to say, this is what our committee proposes for the consideration of the Amir Sahib and the Shura. And each one has to do that. That's the second day. But before that, all it has to be typed up the night before. And what they do, they have to make Xerox copies, so each member of the Shura gets a copy of all that these committees have decided. That's why you see this little thing is so full of papers. Because it comes from all the committees, what the proposals were and what their recommendations. What we do in the committee is give recommendations to the Shura and to especially Amir Sahib.
Okay. And then after that, was this the third day then? Is this the last day then?
No, this is the second day.
Okay.
But that takes up that entire day.
Right.
Because you have to hear all those subcommittees, and if any of the delegates want to speak on any of those proposals that those committees have made, he's allowed to do so, whether he's for or against it. But if you're in the financial committee, you cannot speak on finance because you made that decision. But you have other three decisions you can. I couldn't speak on Tabligh, not Tabligh, but Tabligh. Because I was in that committee and I helped form those decisions. But I could speak on Tabligh if I didn't like something, their findings, or if I want to make some suggestion, because Amir Saab he's sitting there presiding over the thing and he's listening to everything that everybody's saying, and if you got any objections to the finding of one of these committees, he's listening to that. And if you're in favor of some of the things that the people, he's listening to that. But if you want to speak for or against the decisions of any committee, you can do it. But your decision doesn't necessarily have to be accepted, but you're allowed to give it if you want to talk. And so they take your name down. And this is what Amir Saab says to the delegates, will you come up here and assist me in this particular thing? And you write down the names of the people who want to speak against this particular thing. So that's 4 categories, so that takes the entire day.
So to summarize it then, it would be that the proposals come from each Jamaat. They are either rejected or accepted by the Shura. They are sent to the subcommittees for discussion and evaluation, and then they go to the Shura for the final wrap-up. So what happens there?
After all of the reports from the subcommittees has been presented to the general body of Shura, then the Amir, he makes a decision to reject the things that the proposal that he considers not important. Then he accepts the ones that he thinks should be sent forward for consideration by Hazur. And before he does that, he takes a consensus of the entire Shura delegations and says, this is what I'm going to propose. I'm going to send to Hazur. Does anyone have any disagreement, or do you agree with this consensus? And normally the people say, yes, we agree with it. And if anyone has protests, he can send a protest along with the Amir's report if he wants to Hazur and say, look, I'm here and I don't agree with this, and here's my name and so forth, and this is why I don't agree. He's allowed to do that, but normally people don't do that. And that concludes it.
In closing, could you give us like an example of what one of these results in action of one of these proposals what it was or is?
Well, I think that one of our most outstanding proposals, we've had others, many come from the Shura, but I think one of our most outstanding proposals is our satellite program. Is that one of our local Jamaat sent that proposal in that why should the people in London be the only ones in the Jamaat, the Ahmadiyya movement, to be able to hear Hazur's khutbahs on Friday. So that proposal was accepted, and it went to the Shura, and it went to Hazur, and it got approval. And right now we have Hazur is giving his khutbahs on 6 continents, and that's a very and then that process has increased. It's on a daily basis now, so that's a very positive thing that shows what can come out of a Shura when this, as long as when you have Shura, what can come out of it.
Thank you, brother.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
In this brief time that we've had here, we hope that we have provided a understanding and an overview of the Shura process. Thank you for joining us.
Is
that a wrap? Huh?
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
Thank you very much. Sorry for putting you through that right last minute.
Well, that's life.